AMD just announced FSR Diamond, which is designed to be natively optimized for Project Helix. That's the next Xbox, which is it just a PC? More on that in a minute, and deeply integrated into the GDK. We've got a lot of talk about, is that going to be RDNA 5 exclusive? Some thoughts that the answer may be yes. Some thoughts on how will Project Helix be supporting Xbox stuff if it's also just a PC. And we also have additional information affecting PC gaming coming out of GDC. Stuff like advanced shader delivery, changes to DirectStorage, and new WinML features. So some really big things coming here. We've also got Valve's Steam Machine, additional information, some interesting info from Valve regarding Steam in general. Nvidia is also announcing a release date for the dynamic multi-frame generation part of DLSS 4.5. We already got the super resolution, but we didn't get the dynamic multi-frame generation yet. We now have a release date of March 31st. We also have Nvidia expanding RTX Remix with support for advanced particle VFX, with Quake III RTX early access showing that feature off now. And we also have confirmation that The Witcher 4 will have Nvidia's RTX Mega Geometry support. More thoughts on what else that is unofficially confirming in a minute. And we do have a new driver update from Nvidia with some fixes to issues caused by their previous driver updates. Anyway, I want to start here, but we got a lot to talk about. I'll try to timestamp stuff if you want to find the pieces that are most interesting to you. So what is going on here with this FSR Diamond and Project Helix? These are kind of intertwined to some degree. So first, let's hear from the AMD side of things. So this is Jack Quinn, who is SVP and GM for Computing and Graphics at AMD. So definitely an official source here saying, big moment for the future of gaming. He's responding to the Xbox announcement of Project Helix with additional information there at GDC. Saying, thrilled to partner with Xbox and Ashish Shah on Project Helix, a multi-year deep co-engineering partnership driving next-gen performance, breakthrough graphics, and compatibility with your existing Xbox game library. Now, compatibility is going to be a big part of what we're talking about today, both for Project Helix and older Xbox stuff, if this is indeed a PC, but also for the FSR Diamond compatibility, because there's some thoughts on, is this going to be another gate-kept version of FSR that, doesn't come to AMD's 9000 series? And there's some wording here that makes me a little bit concerned that that's the case. So as we continue here, powering the experience, super excited to unveil AMD FSR Diamond, designed to be natively optimized for Project Helix and deeply integrated into the GDK. Now, the way AMD has phrased things in the past, when we see natively optimized for Project Helix, which Project Helix seems like it's probably running on RDNA 5, then natively optimized for RDNA 5 could be another way of reading this. And when, FSR 4 was natively optimized for the AMD RDNA 4, their 9000 series GPUs, and we didn't get FSR 4 on the previous generations, despite seeing the Int 8 version leak out that, wasn't quite the same thing, but seemed to work fairly well when I tested it out. Hearing this natively optimized for Project Helix wording does make one wonder if this is going to be yet another generation of FSR that is going to be gate-kept to a certain hardware generation. And when asked about it, Kepler L2 said yes. Now, Kepler L2 is not exactly Jack Quinn. He's not an official source of information on this. However, Kepler L2 has seem to have had inside information regarding AMD hardware and software stuff in the past. So I would rate it, better than just some random commenter. But again, it's hardly official information. But yeah, there's a lot of signs here that we might be seeing that same sort of a problem, which again, people are already extremely upset with the lack of support of FSR 4 on older GPUs. So I'm really hoping we don't see this again. Now, why would that be the case? Well, if RDNA 5 moved to like, let me put it in terms of like, so what is happening with FSR 4, right? So FSR 4 is designed to run with FP8. Now, again, we'd seen a different version of the technology designed to run on Int 8, which would run better on the older hardware. But when AMD was talking about it being natively designed for RDNA 4, they were talking about the FP8 acceleration on these GPUs. As far as I know, now I'm not like a machine learning expert, when I look into the specs of RDNA 4, so AMD's 9000 series that supports FSR 4, it looks like to me, while they have FP8 support, I don't think they have FP4 support. So like you'd have to, if you were running something that was designed with FP4 in mind, it would run slower. No, it doesn't mean you couldn't support it at all. But you see where I'm going with this. So RDNA 5, which we're probably seeing in Project Helix here, could have FP4 support. And if FSR Diamond is designed around FP4, then we could be running into the same sort of issue where it's not impossible to provide a version of it to run on older generations of hardware that don't have the native acceleration. But AMD has shown already with the FSR 4 situation that that's a huge question mark. So yeah, that's why there's a lot of concern over this. Now, what are they saying about FSR Diamond? They're saying it's built for next-gen neural rendering, next-gen ML-based upscaling, new ML-based multi-frame generation, and next-gen ray regeneration for RT and path tracing. So notice all the use of words like next-gen here. So in other words, again, a lot of that could be FP4 accelerated. If I'm trying, I'm trying not to be negative about this, guys, but I just want to be realistic about how I'm interpreting a lot of this. Because if FSR 4 is now current gen, that is not next gen. We're talking a next gen upscaling technique, right? AMD doesn't have multi-frame generation support right now for 9000 series GPUs. They're talking about a new machine learning based multi-frame generation support. They really haven't already launched ray regeneration, but, sort of technically kind of have at least talked about it being sort of, like they've launched Redstone, but we didn't really have any examples. I guess we have, is it Call of Duty with ray regeneration support? So I guess there's one game. So that would be the current gen of it. So is this talking about a next generation of that? And again, will any of this run on the previous gen hardware? I don't know. But that is a concern. Now, again, they're also saying thank you, Microsoft and Xbox team, for an epic engineering collaboration, 20 plus years of innovation, and we're pushing it further than ever. FSR Diamond opens up a new dimension of innovation. More to come. Let's go. So that is what we have officially from AMD regarding FSR Diamond. So it sounds like they're going absolutely big on neural rendering, machine learning upscaling, multi-frame gen, path tracing, ray regeneration. But like I said, is all of that new stuff designed for some like FP4 or further machine acceleration, which could bring into question whether it's supported on previous generations? That's a big question. But again, another big question here is, so what exactly is going on with Project Helix and its compatibility with your existing Xbox game library? So there's kind of some conflicting ideas out here, because one of the big ideas is that Project Helix is just going to be a pre-built gaming PC that runs the Windows full screen experience. However, we also have some information that pushes back at least a little bit against how that would be running the console games at least. But I think there's a lot of evidence that it's essentially going to be a PC running the Windows full screen experience. Now, one of the reasons for that is because one of the big things announced here is the release of the Windows full screen experience in April, just like officially for all Windows 11 PC form factors. So we've seen the full screen experience so far on certain handheld devices, and you could opt in through like the Insider program to try to get this into other devices. But we are now getting an April release date for what they're now calling Xbox mode. So the formerly known as Windows full screen experience way of having a more controller-friendly way of using your gaming PC is now called Xbox mode, has an April release date, will generally be available on Windows 11 PC form factors, rolling out to users in select markets. Now, so that's certainly interesting, and I think that's a good thing to have that available. But then as this is being announced alongside the push towards Project Helix, the question is, so is this just getting ready for Project Helix? And I would be on the side of saying, I think yes, at least to an extent. So I think Project Helix will likely be essentially running a Xbox mode version of Windows 11. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't have some other type of compatibility with previous generation Xbox game library, because they're talking about 4 generations of Xbox game support. Now, I've heard some people mention that maybe it's just compatibility through streaming. Like you could stream it if they're not games that have native PC support. I think that the fact that AMD, who's more of the hardware partner in all of this, is mentioning compatibility with your existing Xbox game library, calls that take on this a little bit into question. Because if the hardware partner here is talking about compatibility with existing Xbox game library, I would imagine that there's something beyond just streaming them if they're not available with a Windows version. So that's something. Then we'd been seeing some rumors saying that it's basically a PC that uses the Windows full screen experience, FSE, that we just saw in the ROG Ally X to emulate a console experience. And the claim that the native Xbox SKU that had an updated build target that developers were building games for, that's going away. There's no Xbox Helix build target, it's just a UWP build. You're just shipping a game for the Windows Store. You still have access to your Xbox library thanks to BC emulation, but as far as having a native Xbox console SKU you built your game towards, that's done. So that was one take. However, there has been some pushback against that. This is an article from WCCF Tech that's capturing a lot of this. I'll have all my sources linked in the video description. Some pushback was saying that people were then responding that, pointing out that UWP was deprecated in 2019, and Xbox Series X and S use containerization technology to manage backward compatibility and system resources and enable features like Quick Resume. As such, Sneakers SO, which was the source of this comment here, may have provided inaccurate information unless the Xbox Project Helix handles software differently than its predecessors. And then a further update just coming in today, we have Xbox engineering lead Eden Marie saying she finds it hard to believe people are tweeting about UWP in 2026. Okay, so it seems like Project Helix won't just run UWP game builds, according to an Xbox engineering lead. However, the exact state of this support for these previous generation consoles, I think, is still up in the air. We have to see what this is going to look like. I'm imagining that we're going to see basically a pre-built gaming PC that you can hook up to your TV, you turn it on with your controller, it boots into a Xbox mode version of Windows that you can then exit to get into a full version of Windows to support other stores like Steam. But then where does the backwards compatibility fit into that? I could see there being basically a button you press to access backwards compatibility mode, and then it could essentially like dual boot or run like a virtualization environment where you have that backwards compatibility. And what would be kind of interesting is if the Project Helix can do that while other gaming PCs can't, because we're not seeing any discussion of this new Xbox mode for Windows mentioning anything about running, previously just console supported versions of Xbox games. So with that in mind, I kind of wonder if this could be a little bit of a, I don't know how to put it, like a differentiation factor for why would you buy the Project Helix pre-built if there's a million other gaming PC options out there? And if one of those reasons is it's the only one that has backwards compatibility for Xbox games, maybe via some, like I said, some kind of dual boot feature or something like that, that you can access, that would be interesting to differentiate it. Also, I would hope that it would, well, I'm not expecting it to be a low-priced device. I do wonder if, Microsoft could essentially sell at cost, as opposed to having to make a profit on the hardware. So perhaps it could offer a decent performance per dollar or something like that. So I am very interested in this. But yeah, there's still a lot unknown about that. But there's also seeming to be a huge push at GDC regarding this Xbox mode for Windows and the bringing together of the Xbox and Windows gaming environments. More on that in a minute. But I think to me that pushes me to believe that, how should I phrase this? I would be highly doubtful that the next generation of Xbox, whatever this Project Helix represents, I doubt that the games how should I put this? That there will be games specifically developed for that as a console-style device. It's looking like, from everything we're hearing at GDC, that it's going to be Windows versions of games. You're developing a Windows version of a game, and it will run on Project Helix. So I think the backwards compatibility will be the only console-like thing that could potentially be different about this. And I think next generations of Xbox games aren't going to be Xbox games. They're going to be PC games. And so other than backwards compatibility, I think we're going to stop seeing there being a difference between Xbox and Windows for gaming. I think those are coming together, and I already mentioned in a previous video that I also think that's why, well, one of the reasons why PlayStation may be backing off of their PC ports, because they'd be essentially allowing their console exclusives to go to Xbox, because Xbox is now a PC, with potentially some kind of interesting console, backwards compatibility to the previous generations. So this is the official summary of what we got from GDC regarding Xbox. So the summary is, our team is deeply in development on our next generation Xbox console. So they're still calling it a console, Project Helix. We are pushing the boundaries of rendering and simulation in partnership with AMD using FSR Next to power what comes next. Starting in April, Xbox mode will begin rolling out to Windows in select markets. It brings a familiar Xbox experience to players while keeping the flexibility and openness of Windows. For developers, the Xbox Play Anywhere catalog now spans more than 1,500 games, creating a powerful opportunity to reach players seamlessly across across console and Windows. And that's where I'm really seeing this as, I think they're signaling to developers that I think you're going to start targeting Windows and Xbox simultaneously, not as distinct platforms moving forward. Also, I can't remember if it's in this article. Yes, it is right here. They're also mentioning that they are going to ship alpha versions of the Project Helix hardware to developers beginning in 2027. So, Project Helix, at least development hardware alpha builds, is going to be shipping in 2027, but that's to game developers. We'll have to see when it's actually available on the actual market, and I think part of that will have to do with what a RAM price is looking like. Now, from more of the Windows side of things, we've seen this summary of information. So they, again, are mentioning in April, the Xbox mode generally available for Windows 11 PC form factors, rolling out to users in select markets. But here's some interesting stuff. So also, faster load times and streaming performance enabled with advanced shader delivery available to more games, including new self-enablement and Z-standard support in DirectStorage coming soon. They're also promising improved developer experience with DirectX dump files and additional PIX improvements, including Shader Explorer and more. This seems to be kind of like development tools for debugging and optimizing and things like that. And this is also, I think, a big deal. New linear algebra capabilities to accelerate inference in shaders, with a preview of WinML models in graphics workloads coming soon. So notice how this seems to line up with what we're seeing here from Jack Quinn, where they're talking about built for next-gen neural rendering. So one of the things that we've also heard from the PlayStation side of things, with Project Amethyst, the partnership between AMD and PlayStation, was a discussion of not just neural rendering and not just like upscaling and frame generation, but actually allowing more options for neural techniques for game developers to essentially write their own stuff, like do what they want to do with it, whether that affects gameplay or graphics. But more access to that machine learning and neural acceleration in the actual making of the game, rather than just using it for upscaling, things like that. So more access to that. That seems to be a big push in the next generation of PlayStation. We're seeing it referenced here, I think, in the announcement of Project Helix from AMD, and then that's also seeming to be coming Windows as well. So we're seeing WinML to give more access to, again, linear algebra. If you're like, wait, why are they talking about math? If you're unaware, the way machine learning is done is through matrix multiplication. Matrix stuff is linear algebra. Anyway, so that's how that's done. Anyway, so that's big stuff. Now, I am, out of all of that, extremely interested in the advanced shader delivery because the goal here is to reduce shader stutter, but also reduce the need for the long shader pre-compilation steps. Now, this has already been announced last year, and it was supported for the ROG Xbox Ally, but it didn't really have widespread support to my knowledge. So now they're talking about expanding advanced shader delivery to all game developers, allowing them to future-proof their titles and self-enable support through the Xbox Store. Now, this is the part that, I get why Microsoft would do it this way, but so if I buy my game through Steam, am I not going to have access to advanced shader delivery? Is Valve going to offer something similar? I know Valve does, with SteamOS, it's kind of a different thing because you're also in Linux and you have Fossilize and all sorts of stuff. But so I think Valve, can do similar things for their own hardware. I'm just interested to see how this works. Because basically the idea behind this is for the game studios, and they're expanding the API level support for this, to basically collect shader packages and then be able to distribute those through the cloud. So when you download a game, the game developer could have uploaded the shader package along with the game, and so you can then download basically already compiled shaders to your device, which means you get into the game faster without the shader pre-compilation, and ideally you're not having the stutters and things on your first playthrough of the game. But again, they're definitely mentioning like the Xbox Store is the way to get this, which would be frustrating if that's kind of the only way, although again, I understand from Microsoft's point of view, but still. Anyway, I do like this API level support for deterministically collecting and packaging shaders as part of their development process, because even if this doesn't tie into some kind of cloud downloading of the shaders, another issue with stutters in games, because some games have a shader pre-compilation step, but then you still get shader compilation stutters because their collection of shaders wasn't complete when you did that pre-compilation. So if this is in some way going to assist with getting all of the shaders, not missing any, this could at least help reduce the stutter situation on PC. It's looking like we're going to find out more about this on March 12th. Looks like there's going to be a talk. I know I'm not at GDC, but I'm hoping information comes out from that. They're talking about additional improvements to DirectStorage, faster asset streaming and storage, introducing support for Z-standard compression and a new tool, the Game Asset Conditioning Library, improving compression efficiency while simplifying asset conditioning across production pipelines, expanded high-throughput streaming scenarios, reduced I/O latency, and increased throughput for data-heavy environments without adding complexity to existing workflows. So honestly, again, this looks like more from the developer's side. So as a gamer, I would just hope games run better, hopefully. I'm going to be honest, I have not been super impressed with DirectStorage so far, but maybe it gets better. Anyway. And then again, here we're talking about the evolving DirectX for the machine learning era. So machine learning is becoming a core part of real-time graphics, and DirectX is evolving to support the next generation of ML-driven rendering on Windows. So they're talking about machine learning driven rendering. So again, we've seen some things in the past I've reported on from Nvidia talking about things like neural texture compression and even just neural materials, all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of experimentation going on with this. But ideally, you don't get things locked down to just like NVIDIA specific, right? If DirectX could just access machine learning acceleration on whatever GPU you're running your game on, it would be nice if this stuff was just a little more broadly supported. And I'm hoping that that's what this is going to move towards, so it's not so proprietary. They're saying we're introducing new capabilities that make it easier for developers to bring neural techniques into their graphics pipelines, starting with linear algebra support in HLSL to unlock hardware-accelerated ML operations directly in shaders. We will also give a preview of advances in Windows ML that will enable game developers to bring their own models directly into gameplay for a new paradigm of immersive experiences, reducing the need for hand-authored shader logic. So again, bringing machine learning acceleration into gameplay, right? So just whatever developers want to cook up for that machine learning hardware to accelerate could be an interesting thing. We'll have to see, right? And together, these investments lay the foundation for scalable AI-driven graphics pipelines, extending what's possible in Windows 11 today while preserving the flexibility developers expect from DirectX. All right, the DirectX and Pix tooling updates, again, seem to be just increasing ability to debug, optimize, etc., and all of that. So that seems to be the big PC-focused announcements from Microsoft and Xbox and AMD. We also have Valve talking about their Steam Machine, which again, it's sounding like more and more of a direct competitor to Project Helix, although by the sounds of things, Project Helix probably targeting higher end performance, and it's Windows-based by the sounds of it, whereas Steam Machine may be a little bit lower performance and SteamOS-based, so, but still both kind of bringing more of a console experience to PC, or you might say more of a PC setup into the console space, however you want to look at it. What they're talking about here is the Steam Machine verification process. So if you're familiar with Steam Deck at all, you'll know that games can be deck verified, which I will say has been kind of hit or miss. Oftentimes games don't perform super well, even if they're deck verified, and some games that actually run pretty great aren't deck verified because they have small text size in some menu somewhere. So whatever, but they're talking about this process. So if a game is deck verified, they're going to say it's already going to be Steam Machine verified. It'll check for the same kind of input expectations for the deck, so good controller support. Now, they're going to say to be Steam Machine verified, the game should be able to play at least 30 frames per second at 1080p. Now, they're not mentioning whether that's after upscaling. And they're saying that it should be about 6 times the Steam Deck performance. They're saying they're not testing display resolution or legibility for the Steam Machine verification, so small text size shouldn't be an issue for Steam Machine verification, and they've updated API to detect hardware. So this is kind of their flowchart showing if they've already tested if the game is Steam Deck verified, how that would apply to Steam Machine verification. They're also talking about Steam Frame, which is their new VR system, talking about the verification process for that. So it looks like for standalone play only, VR and non-VR games will be tested. Will be tested. Input will check for fully playable with Steam Frame controllers. Performance, standard VR titles should reach 90 FPS. 2D titles 30 FPS at 1280 by 720 at least, and a legible UI. All right. So Valve also published some interesting information that Steam gamers pulled 100 exabytes of data in 2025. Now, you might not have any context for what an exabyte even is, let alone 100 of them. So this is the quote from Valve. All those users are downloading a lot of content. In 2024, we delivered about 80 exabytes to customers, and in 2025, that grew to 100 exabytes. It's hard to make sense of such a huge number, but just for fun. Steam users are averaging 274 petabytes of installs and updates per day. That's 11.42 petabytes per hour. Now, again, you might not even be familiar with a petabyte. So, gigabytes. You probably understand what a gigabyte is. How about 190,000 gigabytes per minute? 190,000 gigabytes of data per minute are being downloaded from Steam. That's a lot. Anyway, I already mentioned in my intro to the topics list for today that we have a release date now for the dynamic multi-frame generation piece of DLSS 4.5 that should also coincide with the 6x mode for frame gen. So 6x frame gen, I'm not super excited about because honestly, I rarely use frame gen. When I do, it's usually ×2. But I do like the idea of dynamic multi-frame generation. So regardless of if they push the numbers bigger, in some games, there could be a wide variety of performance variants. For example, I just finished playing through Resident Evil Requiem, and there are areas of that game that are fairly heavy, and there are areas of the game that are really light. But if you just want to use the same graphic settings all the time, you could actually run into a situation where even just setting 2x frame gen sometimes goes over your monitor's maximum refresh rate, and that can cause judder or screen tearing issues. So things actually feel less smooth. Whereas if you have the dynamic multi-frame gen, it could just target a certain frame rate that you want, and it will just use frame gen as needed and at whatever multiple is needed to get you close to but not surpass the frame rate target. So I actually like this feature. I think it will make frame gen a little bit easier to just use as what I think does best. It's a motion smoothing technology. So you dial in your graphic settings without frame gen to get decent performance. And then if the game is already responsive, but you're not near your monitor's max refresh rate, using frame generation to smooth out the visual experience, I think is useful on high refresh rate. We're talking 240 hertz, 300 hertz plus displays. And then having it work dynamically to just kick in whatever frame gen is needed to be near that display refresh rate cap, I think sounds like a really good way of using it. So anyway, there's that. Also, we have Nvidia's RTX Remix. Next month, we'll be giving advanced particle VFX with a Quake III RTX early access available now. I haven't tried this out yet. I did see some demo videos of it, which you could take a look at. It seems like it's cool. I like the modding scene. I like that NVIDIA is giving these tools to make these advanced mods and remixes and remakes of older games. I definitely see the NVIDIA side of it where, and it's going to be a NVIDIA feature thing. It's a reason to buy NVIDIA. So I understand why this is an NVIDIA marketing tool. At the same time, I think it's cool to have mods and things to play with on old games. So I think that's cool to see. And again, we got the Witcher 4 officially confirmed for RTX Mega Geometry, which should allow for higher frame rates and lower VRAM use when doing things like a giant forest scene, which we saw a little bit of a screenshot on, but they said it's not representative of the gameplay anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. This forest looks super realistic and all that, but now, as I understand it, the idea here behind Mega Geometry is to do something kind of like Nanite does in Unreal Engine 5, but with better support for NVIDIA's path tracing, which is why I'm also going to mention that I think this is unofficially confirming that The Witcher 4 will support path tracing. Now, I think a lot of people might have already suspected it would, just because CD Projekt already has path tracing support in Cyberpunk. Like, obviously, you would expect them to continue that tradition, with Witcher 4. But to my knowledge, I haven't seen it officially announced anywhere that The Witcher 4 would support path tracing. Given that my understanding of Mega Geometry is it's pretty much there to make path tracing work with features like similar to Nanite, then this seems to me, at least, to be unofficial confirmation of Witcher 4 path tracing. Anyway, that's how I'm reading that. Also, we got a new NVIDIA GeForce Game Ready driver. This is 595.79. This one mentions that it fixes the issues with Resident Evil Requiem, where you had white glowing light dots appearing in the game with subsurface scattering enabled, which I thought was ironic that it was the Resident Evil Requiem driver that introduced this compatibility issue to Resident Evil Requiem. But anyway, it's now fixed. And this is also the driver that you'd want to use for Crimson Desert support, because they seem to be fixing a crash that was occurring on the previous driver version. Also seems to be patching up some crashing issues with Star Citizen. and some other general bugs, like I had reported on the GPU voltage capping, especially when trying to overclock on the previous driver. That is also fixed according to the patch notes. I haven't tested it myself. And they're also reporting fix to intermittent application crash or driver timeout that may be observed when multi-key DRM content in a browser on HDCP 1.x monitors. Anyway, so there's that. I haven't tested this out in RE Requiem. I've seen some people asking me to do so. Maybe I'll have the chance. We'll see. Remember, I do still teach full-time on top of doing all of this. Speaking of which, I do have other things to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on FSR Diamond. Do you think it's going to support older generations of AMD hardware? Am I way off base thinking it might not? What do you think about Project Helix and what this means for PC gaming in general, as well as how is it going to operate on the backwards compatibility? Anyway, I'm really curious what you guys are thinking. Let me know in the comment section. I hope all of you have an excellent day.